David stared at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, his hands shaking as he read the words that felt like a punch to his gut. 30 days. That's all he had left before he and his 7-year-old daughter Lily would be homeless. He crumpled the paper and shoved it into his jacket pocket, hoping Lily hadn't seen it through the window. 3 months had passed since the marketing company laid him off. 3 months of sending out resumes, going to interviews, and getting rejected. His savings account showed $12.37. The rent was overdue, the electricity bill sat unopened on his kitchen counter, and Lily needed new winter boots before the snow started falling. "Daddy, are you okay?" Lily's voice came from behind the door, sweet and worried. David took a deep breath and forced a smile before turning the key. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just some mail." Lily stood there in her 2 small pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit. Her brown eyes studied his face the way kids do when they sense something's wrong but don't understand what. "Mrs. Johnson called. She said you didn't pick up your phone." Mrs. Johnson was their elderly neighbor who watched Lily after school when David had job interviews. He'd turned off his phone to avoid the collection calls that came every few hours. "I'll call her back in a minute." "Did you finish your homework?" "Most of it. I need help with math." Lily climbed onto their worn-out couch and spread her worksheets on the coffee table. Tommy's mom brought cupcakes to school today for his birthday. She made them herself. David's heart sank. Lily's birthday was next month, and he had no idea how he'd manage even a small celebration. "That sounds nice, honey. Can we make cupcakes sometime?" "Sure we can." The lie came easy, but it tasted bitter. Everything felt like a promise he couldn't keep anymore. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, David sat at his laptop searching job boards with desperate energy. Most positions wanted experience he didn't have or offered wages that wouldn't cover daycare, let alone rent. Then he saw it. A cleaning company called Night Shift Solutions was hiring immediately. The pay was decent. The hours were overnight, and they were looking for someone to clean offices downtown. David had never done cleaning work before, but pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. He filled out the application, emphasizing his attention to detail and reliability. Within 2 hours, his phone rang. "Is this David Chen?" The woman's voice was brisk but not unkind. "Yes, that's me. I'm calling about your application. Can you start tomorrow night?" The position is cleaning Sterling Industries downtown. It's a big tech company, very high-end. The client expects perfection. David's pulse quickened. "Yes, absolutely." "What time?" 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Wear dark clothes, nothing flashy. The building manager will meet you at the service entrance. Don't be late. After hanging up, David looked around his small apartment. The walls needed painting. The carpet had stains he'd tried countless times to remove, and the kitchen faucet dripped no matter how tight he turned it. But it was home. He had to find a way to keep it. The next evening, David arranged for Mrs. Johnson to stay overnight with Lily. The old woman asked no questions, just squeezed his shoulder and told him she'd made extra soup for Lily's lunch tomorrow. Sterling Industries occupied 40 floors of gleaming steel and glass in the heart of downtown. David had walked past the building before, always wondering what it would be like to work somewhere so impressive. Now he knew he'd be there every night, just not in the way he'd ever imagined. The service entrance was hidden around back, away from the marble lobby and expensive art that greeted the regular employees. A tired-looking man with a clipboard met David at the door. "You're the new guy?" He looked David up and down. "I'm Pete, the building supervisor. Here's your key card, supply cart, and the floor assignments. Start from the top and work your way down. Don't touch anything on the desks except to dust around it. Don't use the main elevators during business hours. Stick to the service lift." "Questions?" David shook his head, though he had dozens of questions. Pete handed him a uniform shirt and walked away, leaving David alone with a cart full of cleaning supplies and 40 floors of work ahead. The service elevator groaned as it carried him to the top floor. When the doors opened, David stepped into a world that felt like another planet. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, lined with offices that had windows bigger than his entire living room. The carpet was so thick his footsteps made no sound. He started with the bathrooms, grateful for work that felt straightforward. Scrub, rinse, dry, restock. The supplies were high quality, nothing like the dollar store cleaners he used at home. Even the paper towels felt expensive. The offices were harder to navigate. Each one told a story about its occupant through family photos, certificates on walls, and personal items scattered on desks. Some were neat and organized. Others looked like paper hurricanes had torn through them. David cleaned around everything carefully, afraid to disturb anything important. On the 38th floor, he found an office that was different from the rest. Larger, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the entire city spread out below like a carpet of lights. The desk was massive, made of dark wood that probably cost more than David's car. Papers were scattered everywhere. Coffee cups sat in various stages of emptiness, and a laptop sat open with numbers scrolling across the screen. David was dusting the window when he heard footsteps in the hallway. His heart jumped. Pete had said the building should be empty except for security guards. He quickly moved his cart to the side and tried to look invisible. A man walked into the office, talking quietly on his phone. He was younger than David expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his tie was loose, and he moved with the kind of tired energy David recognized from his own long days of job hunting. "I don't care what the Tokyo office thinks," the man was saying. "The numbers don't lie. If they can't see that, maybe they shouldn't be making decisions." He ended the call and tossed his phone onto the desk, finally noticing David standing by the window. For a moment, neither of them spoke. David felt like he'd been caught somewhere he shouldn't be, even though this was literally his job. The man looked surprised but not angry. "Sorry," David said quickly. "I can come back later." "No, it's fine. You're the new cleaning guy?" "Yes, sir. David." The man nodded and sat heavily in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "Nathan, I'll be here for a while, but don't mind me. Do what you need to do." David continued his work quietly, aware of Nathan typing and occasionally muttering at his computer. When he finished emptying the trash, Nathan looked up. "Long night? Every night," David replied without thinking, then worried he'd said too much. But Nathan just nodded like he understood. "Tell me about it." As David pushed his cart toward the next office, he realized something had shifted in that brief exchange. For the first time in months, someone had looked at him like he was a person, not just a problem to be solved or a failure to be avoided. It was a small thing, but it felt like the first good thing that had happened to him in a very long time. 3 weeks into his new job, David had developed a routine that kept him invisible during the day and efficient at night. He'd drop Lily at school, sleep until 3 in the afternoon, spend time with her until bedtime, then head to Sterling Industries for another 8-hour shift of cleaning offices, and trying not to think about his dwindling bank account. The pay was helping, but barely. After rent, utilities, and groceries, there wasn't much left. Lily had mentioned twice that her winter coat was getting tight, and David pretended not to notice how she'd started wearing 2 sweaters to school, instead of asking for a new one. What kept him going were the small victories. His supervisor, Pete, had complimented his work. The day shift employees had stopped leaving passive-aggressive notes about cleaning standards. And sometimes on the 38th floor, he'd find Nathan still working late into the night. Their conversations had grown from polite nods to brief exchanges about the weather or how late Nathan was staying. David learned that Nathan often worked until 2 or 3 in the morning, surviving on coffee and what looked like takeout containers from expensive restaurants that David had only seen in magazines. "Don't you ever go home?" David asked one Thursday night, finding Nathan exactly where he'd left him 4 hours earlier, still staring at his computer screen. Nathan looked up with tired eyes. "Home doesn't have quarterly reports that need to be finished by morning." David continued dusting the bookshelf, but something in Nathan's voice made him pause. "When's the last time you had a real meal? Not just whatever delivery place is still open at midnight?" "I honestly can't remember." Nathan stretched and rubbed his neck. "Why?" David hesitated. He wasn't supposed to give personal advice to the CEO of the company. But the guy looked exhausted, and David recognized the signs of someone pushing themselves too hard. "You know, there's a sandwich place 2 blocks over that opens at 5 a.m. They make real food, not just fancy stuff. Might be worth trying." Nathan smiled for the first time since David had started working there. "You eat there?" "Sometimes. When I can afford it." David immediately regretted adding that last part, but Nathan didn't seem to judge him for it. "I'll check it out. Thanks for the recommendation." The Next week, David noticed Nathan's coffee setup had changed. Instead of the expensive machine that made complicated drinks, there was a simple coffee maker and a bag of regular ground coffee. On the counter sat a wrapped sandwich from the place David had mentioned. Good choice, David said, nodding toward the sandwich. You were right. Real food tastes better than I remembered. Nathan unwrapped it and offered David half. Want some? I always order too much. David was about to decline when his stomach growled loudly enough that they both heard it. He'd skipped dinner to save money for Lily's lunch money the next day. That's very kind of you. They ate in comfortable silence, looking out at the city lights. David had never eaten food this good, and Nathan seemed to be enjoying having company more than the meal itself. Can I ask you something? Nathan said after finishing his half. What did you do before this? David tensed. This was the question he'd been dreading. Marketing. For a mid-sized company downtown. They had layoffs. How long ago? 4 months. David focused on cleaning Nathan's desk, trying to keep his hands busy. I've been applying everywhere, but the market's tough right now. Nathan was quiet for a moment. You have a business degree? MBA from State University. Graduated 6 years ago. David felt embarrassed admitting it. Here he was with a master's degree cleaning offices in the middle of the night. That explains it, Nathan said. Explains what? Why you reorganized my filing system last week. And why you left that note about the broken printer on the 35th floor. Most people wouldn't notice details like that. David had hoped Nathan wouldn't realize he'd been doing extra things. Sorry, I know I'm just supposed to clean, but I saw the chaos and thought, don't apologize. It helped a lot, actually. Nathan turned to face him. You fixed my computer issue too, didn't you? The one where it kept freezing? David nodded reluctantly. It was just a simple software conflict. Took 5 minutes. That problem had been driving me crazy for weeks. Our IT department couldn't figure it out. They were interrupted by David's phone buzzing in his pocket. He ignored it, but it buzzed again, then started ringing. Sorry, I should turn this off, David said, reaching for his phone. No, go ahead. Might be important. David saw Lily's school number on the screen and felt his heart drop. It was almost midnight. Schools didn't call at midnight unless something was very wrong. Hello? Mr. Chen? This is Janet from the after-school program. Lily's still here. Mrs. Johnson never came to pick her up. David's blood ran cold. Mrs. Johnson was supposed to get Lily at 6 p.m. and keep her overnight like she had every night for the past month. What do you mean she never came? We've been trying to reach you for hours. Lily's been waiting. She's okay, but she's scared. David was already pulling off his cleaning gloves and reaching for his jacket. I'm coming right now. Tell her Daddy's on his way. He hung up and realized Nathan had heard the entire conversation. I have to go. My daughter's stuck at school and— Go, Nathan said immediately. Is everything okay? I don't know. Her babysitter didn't show up. David was rushing toward the door, his mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened to Mrs. Johnson? Was she okay? David, wait, Nathan stood up. Do you need a ride? My car's faster than the bus, David stopped. Nathan was offering to drive him across town at midnight to pick up a kid he'd never met. I can't ask you to— You're not asking. I'm offering. Nathan was already grabbing his keys. Let's go get your daughter. The drive to Lily's school took 15 minutes in Nathan's expensive car. David spent the entire time on the phone, trying to reach Mrs. Johnson and getting no answer. When they pulled into the school parking lot, David could see Lily's small figure through the window, sitting in a chair next to the security desk. I'll wait here, Nathan said as David jumped out of the car. Lily ran to David the moment she saw him, wrapping her arms around his waist and burying her face in his jacket. Daddy, I was scared. Mrs. Johnson never came and nobody knew where you were. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm here now. David held her tight, feeling like the worst father in the world. Are you okay? I'm hungry and tired. The security guard explained that they'd tried calling David's cell phone for hours but kept getting voicemail. David realized he'd been keeping his phone on silent during work to avoid collection calls. Another mistake that had put his daughter at risk. When they walked back to the car, Nathan got out and crouched down to Lily's level. Hi there. I'm Nathan. I work with your dad. Lily looked at David for permission, then back at Nathan. Are you the boss? Nathan smiled. Something like that. Are you hungry? I know a place that makes really good hot chocolate. 20 minutes later, they sat in an all-night diner while Lily ate pancakes and told Nathan about her school project on the solar system. David tried calling Mrs. Johnson again, and this time she answered. David, dear, I'm so sorry. Her voice was weak and shaky. I fell down my front steps this afternoon and broke my wrist. I've been at the hospital all evening. I asked my nephew to call you, but I don't think he did. Relief and worry crashed over David at the same time. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm fine, but I won't be able to watch Lily for a while. I'm so sorry to leave you without help. After David hung up, Nathan looked at him across the table. Childcare problems? My babysitter broke her wrist. She's elderly and lives alone. David watched Lily color on the paper placemat, completely unaware that her father's carefully balanced world had just collapsed again. I don't know what I'm going to do. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. What if there was a way to bring Lily to work with you? Just temporarily until you find other arrangements? David looked up in surprise. You'd allow that? The building's safe and she could sleep on the couch in my office. It's not ideal, but it's better than leaving her with strangers or missing work. It was the kindness in Nathan's offer that broke something loose in David's chest. This man, who barely knew him, was willing to bend company rules to help him keep his job and take care of his daughter. Why would you do that for us? Nathan glanced at Lily, who had fallen asleep against David's shoulder, her small hand still holding a crayon. Because everyone deserves a chance to take care of the people they love. For the next 2 weeks, Lily became a regular fixture on the 38th floor of Sterling Industries. Nathan had arranged a small area in his office with pillows and blankets where she could sleep while David worked. At first, David worried constantly about disturbing Nathan or breaking company rules, but Nathan seemed genuinely happy to have them there. Lily, who had been shy the first night, quickly warmed up to Nathan. She'd wake up around 2 a.m. and quietly color or read while the adults worked. Sometimes Nathan would take breaks from his computer to help her with homework, or listen to her practice reading. David watched these interactions with a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite name. She's smart. Nathan said one night after helping Lily with a math problem that had been frustrating her for an hour. Really smart. She gets concepts faster than some of my employees. David looked up from mopping the conference room. She gets that from her mom. It was the first time David had mentioned Lily's mother, and Nathan seemed to sense the weight behind those words. Is she cancer? 3 years ago. David's voice was matter-of-fact, but Nathan could hear the pain underneath. Lily was only 4. She doesn't remember much, which is probably better. Nathan was quiet for a long moment. That must have been incredibly hard. The hardest part was watching Lily try to understand why Mommy couldn't come home from the hospital. David continued cleaning, but his movements had slowed. I promised Rachel I'd take care of our little girl no matter what. Some days I feel like I'm failing that promise. You're not failing, Nathan said firmly. Look at her. She's happy, she's healthy, and she adores you. That's not failure, David smiled sadly. She deserves more than this. More than having to sleep on office couches because her dad can't afford proper child care. She has something more valuable than money, Nathan replied. She has a father who would do anything for her. That conversation marked a turning point between them. Nathan began staying later than usual, not just because of work, but because he enjoyed talking with David. They'd discuss everything from current events to childhood memories while David cleaned and Nathan pretended to work on reports that could have waited until morning. One evening, Nathan made an observation that surprised David. You know, you have better business instincts than most people with fancy degrees. I have a fancy degree, David reminded him. I know. I looked you up. Nathan said it casually, but David stopped what he was doing. You investigated me. I was curious. Your former boss at Morrison Marketing spoke very highly of you. Said letting you go was one of the hardest decisions he'd ever made, but the company had to cut costs somewhere. Nathan leaned back in his chair. He also said you single-handedly saved their biggest client account 2 years running. David felt heat rise in his cheeks. He wasn't used to being praised for his professional abilities anymore. That was my job. It was more than that. You found creative solutions to problems that seemed impossible. That's rare. A few days later, Nathan made an offer that caught David completely off guard. I've been thinking about our conversation. Would you be interested in doing some consulting work? Just a few hours a week when you're not cleaning. We have some marketing projects that could use fresh eyes. David stared at him. You want to hire me? For marketing? I want to hire you because you're good at what you do. The fact that you're currently working as a cleaner doesn't change your skills. I don't know if I can. Think about it. The work would pay 3 times what you make in the same hours cleaning. You could cut back on overnight shifts, spend more time with Lily during normal hours. That night, David lay awake thinking about Nathan's offer. It felt too good to be true, but something in Nathan's expression had been genuine. Not pity, but respect. It had been so long since someone valued his professional opinion that he'd almost forgotten what it felt like. The following Tuesday, Lily came to work with a fever. David had debated calling in sick, but they needed the money too badly. He brought her to Nathan's office as usual, but instead of her normal cheerful chatter, she curled up on the couch and fell into a restless sleep. "She's burning up," Nathan observed, touching her forehead gently. "When did this start?" "This afternoon. I gave her medicine, but it's not helping much." David was trying to work, but kept checking on Lily every few minutes. "You should take her home. I can't afford to miss a shift." David's voice was strained. "She'll be okay here. She just needs to sleep it off." Nathan watched Lily toss and turn, her small face flushed with fever. "David, she needs to be in a real bed, not on an office couch. This is what we have right now." The words came out sharper than David intended, but he was exhausted and worried and trying to balance too many things at once. Without another word, Nathan stood up and started packing his laptop. "Come on, where are we going?" "To my apartment. Lily needs proper rest and you need to stop trying to do everything alone." David wanted to argue, but Lily whimpered in her sleep, and the fight went out of him. Okay. Nathan's apartment was nothing like what David had expected. Yes, it was expensive and spacious, but it felt lived in rather than showy. Family photos sat on tables, books were scattered around, and the kitchen looked like someone actually cooked in it. Nathan led them to a guest room with a comfortable bed and soft lighting. While David settled Lily under the covers, Nathan disappeared and returned with children's fever medicine and a cool washcloth. "How do you have kids' medicine?" David asked. "My sister brings her daughter here sometimes. I try to be prepared." Nathan sat on the edge of the bed and gently placed the washcloth on Lily's forehead. "There you go, sweetheart. This will help you feel better." Lily opened her eyes and looked at Nathan through her fever haze. "Are we at your house?" "Yes, you can rest here tonight." "Is that okay?" She nodded and closed her eyes again. "Thank you for taking care of us." Nathan's expression softened in a way that made David's chest tight with emotion. "You're very welcome." They sat in the living room while Lily slept, both of them listening for any signs that she needed them. David felt awkward being in Nathan's personal space, but Nathan seemed completely natural about having them there. "You didn't have to do this," David said quietly. "Yes, I did." Nathan's voice was equally soft. "David, you've been taking care of everyone else for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone take care of you." The words hit David unexpectedly hard. When was the last time someone had worried about his needs instead of the other way around? When had someone last made sure he was okay? "I don't know how to accept help," David admitted. "You don't have to know how. You just have to let it happen." They were sitting close together on the couch, and David became aware of how Nathan was looking at him. Not with pity or charity, but with something warmer and more complex. "David," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. David turned to face him fully, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with possibility. Nathan reached out and touched David's face gently, his thumb brushing across David's cheek. "Is this okay?" Nathan asked. Instead of answering with words, David closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as they both realized this was what they'd been building toward for weeks. When they finally broke apart, David rested his forehead against Nathan's. "I didn't expect this." "Neither did I," Nathan replied. "But I'm glad it's happening." From the guest room came the sound of Lily calling for her dad. They separated reluctantly, but as David went to check on his daughter, Nathan caught his hand. "This doesn't have to change anything you're not ready to change," Nathan said. "We can take this as slow as you need." David squeezed Nathan's hand. For the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. 2 months after their first kiss, David's life had transformed in ways he'd never imagined possible. Nathan had officially hired him as a marketing consultant, which meant regular pay, normal working hours, and health insurance for both him and Lily. They'd moved into a better apartment. Lily had new clothes that actually fit, and for the first time in years, David wasn't constantly worried about money. More importantly, he was falling in love. Nathan had become a central part of both their lives, joining them for weekend dinners, helping Lily with school projects, and showing David what it felt like to have a real partner. They'd kept their relationship quiet at work, but David could see how happy Nathan was, and that made him happy too. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in November. David was in Nathan's office, presenting ideas for the company's new product launch, when Nathan's assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Sterling, Ms. Victoria Hartwell is here to see you. She says it's urgent." Nathan's expression shifted immediately. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." I tried, but she insisted it couldn't wait. "She's already in the conference room." David had heard Nathan mention Victoria before. She was his ex-fiancée, someone from his social circle who worked in public relations for major corporations. Their engagement had ended 2 years ago, but she still moved in the same wealthy circles Nathan did. "I should go," David said, gathering his papers. "No, finish your presentation. This won't take long." Nathan's voice was tense in a way David had never heard before. But instead of staying, David quietly slipped out after Nathan left. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the conference room was only 2 doors down, and Victoria's voice carried clearly through the glass walls. "Nathan, darling, we need to talk about your latest situation." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play dumb. Everyone's talking about how you're dating the cleaning man. Do you have any idea how this looks?" David's stomach dropped. He pressed himself against the wall, unable to walk away, but wishing he couldn't hear every word. "What I do in my personal life is none of your business. Victoria, it absolutely is my business when it affects Sterling Industries' reputation. My clients are asking questions. The board members' wives are gossiping at charity events. This isn't just about you anymore. David is a talented marketing professional who used to mop your floors." Victoria's voice was sharp with disdain. "Nathan, I know you have a hero complex, but this is ridiculous. You can't save every sob story that walks into your building." David closed his eyes, feeling like he'd been punched. "Is that what people thought? That he was Nathan's charity case? You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen the photos, Nathan. You and him and his daughter at that little diner downtown, playing house like some kind of fairy tale. But this isn't a movie. This is real life, and in real life, people like us don't end up with people like him." "People like him?" "You know what I mean. Different backgrounds, different educations, different worlds entirely. What happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when you get tired of pretending to be something you're not?" David couldn't listen anymore. He walked quickly back to his office, his hands shaking as he closed the door behind him. Victoria's words echoed in his head, each one hitting harder than the last. Hero complex, charity case, playing house. For the next few days, David tried to pretend everything was normal. He went to work, did his job, and spent evenings with Nathan and Lily like always. But Victoria's voice kept replaying in his mind, and he started noticing things he'd tried to ignore before. The way people looked at him in the company elevator, the whispered conversations that stopped when he walked into meetings. The fact that Nathan's friends from his social circle had never been introduced to David, despite their relationship becoming serious. Then came the newspaper article. Lily found it first, reading over David's shoulder while he checked his email on Saturday morning. "Daddy, why is there a picture of you and Nathan in the newspaper?" David's blood ran cold. The headline read, "Tech CEO's Unlikely Romance from Boardroom to Broom Closet." Below it was a photo someone had taken of them at dinner the week before, laughing together while Lily colored on her kids' menu. The article was cruel in the way that gossip columns always were, painting David as a gold digger who'd seduced his way from janitor to boyfriend. It speculated about his motives, questioned Nathan's judgment, and even included quotes from sources close to Sterling Industries who expressed concern about the CEO's questionable personal choices affecting company morale. "Is Nathan in trouble because of us?" Lily asked, her 7-year-old intuition picking up on the tension in the article even if she couldn't understand all the words. "No, sweetheart, everything's fine." But David's voice shook as he said it. Nathan called an hour later, having seen the article. "David, I'm so sorry. I have no idea how they got that photo." "It doesn't matter how they got it. What matters is what people are saying. What people say doesn't matter to me." "Well, it should." David's voice was harder than Nathan had ever heard it. "This affects your business, Nathan. Your reputation. Everything you've worked for. You and Lily are more important than any of that. Those words should have made David feel better, but instead they made him feel worse. Nathan was willing to sacrifice everything for them. But what right did David have to let him do that? Over the next week, things got worse. David overheard employees gossiping about him in the break room. A major client specifically requested that David not be involved in their account review. Nathan's business partner, James, pulled David aside and asked if he'd considered what was best for everyone involved. The final straw came when Lily's teacher called David at work. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to give you a heads up. Some of the other parents have been talking about the newspaper article, and I'm afraid it might affect Lily at school. You might want to prepare her for some questions from her classmates." That evening, David made the hardest decision of his life. "I think we need to take a break," he told Nathan over dinner at their usual restaurant. Nathan set down his fork, his face going pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't working. The gossip, the newspaper articles, the way people look at us. It's affecting your business, and now it's affecting Lily. We can handle whatever comes our way together." "No, we can't." David's voice was steady, but Nathan could see his hands trembling. "Nathan, you live in a different world than we do. Victoria was right about that." "Victoria? Is that what this is about? Whatever she said to you, she didn't say anything to me. She didn't have to." David looked around the restaurant, noticing the way other diners kept glancing at their table. "Look around. We can't even have a quiet dinner without people staring and whispering. I don't care what they think, but I do, and I care what it's doing to you." David reached across the table and took Nathan's hand. "You're a good man, Nathan. Maybe too good, but I can't keep letting you sacrifice everything for us." Nathan's grip tightened on David's fingers. "Please don't do this. We can figure it out." "I already figured it out." David gently pulled his hand away and stood up. "Lily and I are going to stay with my cousin in Portland for a while. I need some time to think, and you need time to fix whatever damage this has caused your company. David, please, this isn't goodbye forever, but it is goodbye for now." David left money on the table for dinner and walked out, not trusting himself to look back. Nathan sat alone at the table for 20 minutes, staring at the door David had walked through, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so quickly. 3 days later, David and Lily were on a bus to Portland. As the city disappeared behind them, Lily pressed her face to the window and asked the question David had been dreading. "Are we ever going to see Nathan again?" David looked out at the highway stretching ahead of them, not sure of the answer himself. "I don't know, sweetheart. I really don't know." 3 weeks in Portland felt like 3 months. David's cousin Mike had been generous with his guest room and patient with Lily's questions about when they were going home, but David could see the strain on everyone. He'd found temporary work at a local marketing firm, but his heart wasn't in it. Every morning he woke up hoping Nathan would call, and every evening he went to bed disappointed. Lily was struggling too. She asked about Nathan constantly, wondering why they'd left so suddenly and when they'd see him again. David had tried to explain it in terms a 7-year-old could understand. But how do you tell a child that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome the world's expectations? "I miss Nathan," Lily said one evening, curled up next to David on Mike's couch. "He was teaching me how to play chess." "I know, sweetheart." "I miss him too. Then why can't we go home?" David didn't have a good answer for that anymore. The space he'd thought they needed was starting to feel more like running away, and he was beginning to wonder if he'd made a terrible mistake. That's when Mike called him into the kitchen, his laptop open on the table. "You need to see this." On the screen was a news video from that afternoon. The headline read, "Sterling Industries CEO makes surprising announcement." David's stomach clenched as he clicked play. Nathan stood at a podium in what looked like the company's main conference room, facing a crowd of reporters and employees. He looked tired but determined, and when he spoke, his voice carried the kind of authority that had made him successful in business. "I called this press conference to address the recent speculation about my personal life and its supposed impact on Sterling Industries. I want to make something very clear. David Chen is not just my partner. He's one of the most talented marketing professionals I've ever worked with. His ideas have already improved our customer engagement by 30%, and his strategic thinking helped us secure 2 major contracts this quarter." The reporters started shouting questions, but Nathan held up his hand for silence. I also want to address the suggestion that our relationship is somehow inappropriate or damaging to this company. The only thing damaging to Sterling Industries would be a culture that judges people based on their previous employment, rather than their abilities. David worked as a cleaner because he needed to support his daughter after losing his job through no fault of his own. That doesn't make him less intelligent, less capable, or less worthy of respect. Nathan paused, looking directly into the camera. To anyone who thinks that love should be limited by social status or bank account balances, I have this to say: you're wrong. David Chen is the best man I've ever known. He's raised an incredible daughter on his own, worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, and never once complained or asked for pity. If that's not the kind of person I should be proud to love, then I don't know what is. The room erupted in questions, but Nathan continued speaking over them. Effective immediately, Sterling Industries is establishing a scholarship program for single parents who want to return to school or change careers. We're also implementing new policies to ensure that our workplace is truly inclusive, not just in our hiring practices, but in our company culture. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to find employment elsewhere. Nathan stepped away from the podium as reporters shouted more questions, but he'd said what he came to say. David stared at the screen long after the video ended. Mike whistled low under his breath. Well, I'll be damned. That man just put his entire career on the line for you. He didn't have to do that, David whispered. Maybe not, but he did it anyway. Question is, what are you going to do about it? David's phone had been buzzing constantly since the press conference, but he'd been ignoring it, afraid to hope. Now he looked at his messages and found dozens of texts from coworkers, friends, and even people he barely knew. All of them supportive. All of them telling him how brave Nathan had been and how lucky they both were to have found each other. The last message was from Nathan, sent just an hour ago. I meant every word. Come home when you're ready. We'll be waiting. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, having heard the video. Was that Nathan on TV? Yes, sweetheart. He was talking about us? He was. Lily considered this seriously, the way kids do when they're processing something important. He said we were worth fighting for. David looked at his daughter, so small and wise, and realized she understood the situation better than he'd given her credit for. Yes, he did. So why are we still here? 2 days later, David and Lily stood outside Sterling Industries with their suitcases, looking up at the building that had changed their lives. David had spent the entire bus ride back wondering if he was making the right choice, but seeing the familiar glass and steel structure made him feel like he was finally home. The security guard at the front desk smiled when he saw them. Mr. Chen, good to have you back. Mr. Sterling's been asking about you every day. They took the elevator to the 38th floor, Lily bouncing with excitement beside him. When the doors opened, Nathan was standing there waiting, as if he'd known exactly when they'd arrive. You came back, he said, his voice full of wonder and relief. You gave me a pretty compelling reason to, David replied. Nathan knelt down to Lily's level as she ran toward him. I missed you, little one. I missed you too. Did you really mean all those things you said on TV? Every single word. Lily hugged him tight, then stepped back with a serious expression. Daddy was sad while we were gone. He tried to hide it, but I could tell. Nathan looked up at David over Lily's head. I was sad too. Sadder than I've ever been in my life. Are you going to keep being together now? Lily asked. David and Nathan both laughed, the first real laughter either of them had felt in weeks. If your dad will have me, Nathan said. David stepped closer, taking Nathan's hands in his. The press conference was incredible, but you didn't have to do that for us. Yes, I did. I had to show you that I'm not ashamed of us. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of the family we're building together. What about the board? What about the company? Nathan smiled. Surprisingly, the response has been mostly positive. Turns out people like authenticity more than I thought they did. We've gotten calls from 3 major clients who specifically want to work with the CEO who stood up for love over social expectations. And Victoria? Victoria who? David kissed him then, right there in the hallway, not caring who might see. When they broke apart, Lily was grinning. Does this mean we're a real family now? Nathan looked at David, who nodded. Yes, sweetheart. We're a real family. 6 months later, they were still a family. David had his own office on the 37th floor. Lily had started calling Nathan Dad without anyone suggesting it. and they'd moved into a house with a yard where Lily could play, and a kitchen big enough for all three of them to cook together. The world hadn't magically become perfect. There were still people who whispered and stared, still challenges that came with blending their different backgrounds, but they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. On a quiet Sunday morning, as David watched Nathan teach Lily how to make pancakes while she giggled at his terrible jokes, he realized that Victoria had been wrong about one thing. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real life, with all its complications and struggles, but filled with the kind of love that makes everything else worth fighting for.